everything I earned so far on it, plus anything I expect in the future.
How come? we
Our
don't
salaries that
have,
we're donating them.
how come
Okay.
We don't have an
I don't
item
have
on the
my,
agenda
I don't
about
have
the
my, I don't have my
Richland
thing on.
Avenue.
Even if I scream, they can't hear me. All right, everybody, I've got my, sorry, doesn't fit right. We have to buy new equipment here, so I have no trouble. All right, good afternoon. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Athens City Planning Commission for July 19th, 2007. We have 3 members present. Mayor Abel and Mr. Haslett are both in another meeting at the moment. But we do have 3 people present. We have no cases. We have several communications. One is the site plan review request by City Council, which was quite lengthy. So possibly we might mention these others that we got in the meantime first. We have some questions. I have some questions of Mr. Haslett and the mayor on some of that, but we'll get to that. There is no particular order. Did you all receive a letter from Ray Haslett about which one is this? Grand Vista Village?
Yes.
Okay. There are a number of things from Burgess and Maple that need to be done since theirs is only a conceptual plan, and so there are lots of things that still need to be done on those. And they
Well,
said,
and didn't we give them approval pending?
pending, yes,
Yeah.
pending. Okay, but this is for information about the other thing. There is also a letter from Mr. Haslett, copy of the letter, 2 letters, or maybe more. One to concerning 25 Kurt Street. That's, as we all call the landmark property. And it's about the bond, responsibility for posting a bond. And there's some questions there also.
I wonder if it got posted because it
I
says
don't know.
prior to July 13th.
I don't know, this is,
You know, Melissa,
What?
whether the bond for the landmark properties was posted
I have
by July
not heard
13th?
anything about that. I'd have to check with Ray.
yeah, and the other letter is about, I'm assuming this is Holzer. Did you read this as being Holzer? It doesn't
what,
say.
Athens Health Realty?
Yeah.
I think that's Columbus. No, that's on Columbus Road. That's Hickory Creek, I think.
No, it says work at 2131 East State.
Oh, well, I'm looking at the next page.
Oh, well,
And Circle
that's,
Drive.
well,
I
this,
was going-
yeah,
we were
this
going
is,
backwards.
yeah, Circle Drive is Hickory Creek
Yeah,
out there. The
okay.
other one in the
And the other
middle,
one-
mine's in the middle.
Must be Holzer.
Is Holzer. It's about a bond, they're all about
Yeah, and
bonds.
they're all July 13th, so we
And
need
so
to
we
ask
don't
Ray.
know. What does, I know it sounds stupid, but I never remember what all these letters are for. What's a CLOMR? I know what FEMA is. What's an LOMR?
Well,
Is that what that letter of?
well, what's a
What's a
C?
CL?
Certified letter.
A cloudy letter, a certified letter?
Yes.
What's a CLOMR? What's an LOMR?
Sorry.
What are these? I know what FEMA is. What's that and what's that?
Okay, the cloner is the original
That's the
application
same name.
to make changes to the floodway, basically. And then this is a letter of map revision
Well, he told
to
us that, but
to
it
make
was,
it permanent.
Ed knew that.
I
Ed,
don't
but
know
we
what the
didn't know what
C
the
is.
C was. He called it Comer.
I don't know.
All right, anyway.
C stands for clean up the site.
Okay. He says certified letter. All right, anyway, what we were doing is going through the other, we've skipped over a little bit here of the site plan review because it's the longest thing in these communications, and we're going through the other communications we have in here.
Ray, did these bonds get posted?
Would you have that reflect that they arrived, Melissa?
Yes.
The bond,
Bonds.
no.
Listed in
They
here.
didn't get posted. There are
Not
3
yet.
of them in this, but it said by July 13th.
No, I don't have any of them yet.
Well, then, they gotta start all over. You don't think so?
Oh, they don't have to start over, but they have to post the bond before they do anything, so.
Well, two of them say July 13th, but
What's the
the
one?
10 Circle Drive, the Hickory Creek one, doesn't.
Yeah, that's not,
It doesn't say any,
It
when.
doesn't have a date.
yeah, if they don't finish it, there's nothing we have to do.
Okay, but the others got zoning certificates, and,
But they have to post their bond before they start their construction or their land development.
okay, and
Well,
we'll know if they do that, huh?
that Hayes Cornwell is already digging and moving around down there.
Well, they did that before they even had a permit.
This is pretty typical.
Well, what happens if you tell somebody they've got to post a bond, and they just don't do it, and they go ahead with their work? This is reminiscent
Then-
of Walnut
Yeah.
Creek, or whatever it's
Then you
called.
go through the process of notice of violation, and then they don't listen, then you do order to comply.
And they
don't
keep
listen,
digging.
then you turn it over to the law director.
Okay,
Yeah. Alright. And we have nothing, this is just for information, Burgess and Nyepel about.
Yes.
All right, and then we, in our file, this week, this I got by mail, this. I don't need it. We have this resolution requesting the Planning Commission to consider amending Table B off-street parking requirements in the zoning code. This is Table B, required parking spaces for rental units shall be provided to the tenant as part of the rental fee. The landlord shall not charge a separate fee for required parking spaces, and neither the landlord nor the tenant shall be permitted to sublease these rental parking spaces, which shall be allocated exclusively to the rental units. They wanted our input on this. I was in my if some of you know, I live right in Central City, and I've got students, and somebody bought the house next door for their son, and he's moved away, and he's been renting it out. And they didn't know I can hear them. I was in my my family room, and they, here's this telling them about this garage, and I wondered why nobody ever uses a garage in that house. They park on the street or in the driveway, and it's got an automatic door and all kind of stuff. And I heard him say to the fellow, well, if you want to use the garage, you have to be, and I think he said $40 a month. It's $40 a month extra. I couldn't quite hear the amount, but I swear it was $40 a month extra, and I wondered why nobody ever used it. So I thought that was sort of curious. I thought, well, shall I turn them in? Or I turn them in on things all the time anyway. But,
can I
yes, go
make
ahead.
a motion that we consider this for a recommendation to City Council, or that we recommend this change, recommend approval of this change or whatever to City Council?
Do
And then we
you,
can discuss it.
well, she's got the motion on the floor, so we can discuss it. Do we need a second?
Second.
All in favor of, no, we have discussion. I'm
Right,
pushing this through a little fast. If I hurry this too much, I have to go back to work, so I better slow down.
Right. Yes. My first-
Okay.
Moved. My first thing, I would like us to get something from the law director's office. Is this legal? Or is this a restraint of,
Oh, this hasn't gone through the law director's office?
I
It
don't
was
know,
in
but I would
City
not
Council?
seen anything from him from the standpoint. I mean, it seems sort of strange to me that we're saying that neither the landlord nor the tenant can sublease the parking. They can sublease the apartment, they can't sublease the parking. So it seems to me is that, the other question I'll have eventually for the code office, how in the world are you going to enforce this? Because we don't get the leases,
Complaints, that's
you know,
Yeah, that's,
yeah. But in order to do it, the tenant or somebody's got to show us the lease.
Well, I don't think this is a problem about if it goes with the apartment, then the tenant shouldn't be able to sublease part of it and not all of it. It seems to me, but let's ask the law director.
Well, it
He's
gets-
the one that's going to have to defend it if somebody
Yeah.
questions it. So I just like to get something from the law director saying whether or not. Because I think we have to have that question before we schedule a public hearing or 'cause this is a change to the zoning code, so.
I haven't lived in an apartment like that, for years since I first got married. And then back in those days, in the apartments there, it was brand new apartments that was not in Athens. We could not sublet those apartments. And it did have parking with it, which went with it. And I think there were some covered apartments, but that they didn't have enough, so I guess it was first come, first served. So first people who moved in were able to go in there, and then the others said, well, later we'll give you covered. But we didn't pay. But are there places where they can say you cannot sublease? Is that
The landlord.
The landlord
put that
can
in.
landlord can put in there,
In
so you
contract,
can't
but
necessarily,
not
this is what I'm trying to say, you can't necessarily sublease an apartment,
Well,
which just adds to the confusion.
what I'd like to do then is withdraw my motion if Harry
Nope, be fine.
goes on, and change it to a motion that we ask for an opinion from the law director about that problem and about the legality of the legality of separating it from the apartment in terms of the sublet.
Okay. But has city council had a public hearing on this yet?
No, they just did a resolution asking us to start the process.
That's all, that's the only thing that started. So
So-
we have to have a public hearing, and we need to have something from the law director fairly fast, so we can arrange this. Like,
So we can't even schedule the public hearing
Until we, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we could schedule the public hearing, I mean.
But if we don't know if it's legal or not, could we ask him to
Well, I just wanted a law
speed
director
it?
opinion.
Huh?
I just wanted an opinion on it.
Okay,
know.
but you want to schedule the public hearing and ask for an opinion beforehand, or wait until we get the opinion to schedule the public hearing?
Well,
I think you should go ahead and schedule the
which
public
will
hearing.
make him move faster.
Okay.
That'll make it move faster. How many people do we have to, is there anybody? No, we don't have to notify anybody. Individual. Okay, what was that public hearing we were gonna have? It's in August, isn't it? On what day?
16th.
Why do I have it down for the 2nd? Does anybody know? Maybe I have it down both days to see which one wasn't there a question if we had enough time to do it?
Yeah, the 16th was the time period that they could say.
Because I think that's what it was. I have a question mark on the other one, and so whether that was enough time. Okay, that's on another subject, so.
But we could have two public hearings.
Okay, we have, this, it isn't one that has to be notified, the surrounding property owners, so is there any need do we have to have a certain number of days that we notify just for that? Of course, what's the date today, the 19th?
This is the 19th.
It's the 19th.
So it's
We
almost,
should be.
that's all a month, yeah.
Should be adequate.
Well, it's okay with me if it's okay with you. Want to have the public hearing begin at 2? Since you're 2? Okay. All right, and then I think maybe if we ask the law director, it would be nice to have an opinion beforehand. What's going on that day? Okay. All right. The other thing that we received as a communication is this copy of the ordinance amending the Athens City Code to establish Title 41 Site Plan Review.
Oh, wait a minute. You've got this one.
I don't have one of
Is
those.
this about the parking for businesses?
No, I don't have that.
We had that last.
Oh, you had it last
Yeah.
time? Oh, okay. It wasn't
We might
here.
back it on the
It's
21st. I wasn't here.
That was some other day. Okay, we had this time was, this came in the mail, this one.
And you had this the last time. Then this is the property split on Ridgeland. or the
Yes,
reline.
yes, we had that
Okay,
before.
great.
You have all your stuff from the last, because you weren't here. Yours is all, see,
That's
that's
right.
why you think we had so much work to do, because you got 2 times worth.
Yeah. this you
And that
did.
we had too.
Okay,
I
all
went
that.
by there and that's still dangerous.
Yeah, well,
I went there.
they haven't built there or anything, but, and, the electronic signs business,
Uh,
did you deal with that last time?
Well, we haven't done anything with it yet. We want to have a task force and do, instead of just dealing with that sign, we want to do all the signs because Larry Payne loves to work on signs. Don't you? I said something to Debbie Phillips and no, don't start that. Everybody knows. Because it's one that people are sort of get upset about too, also. No, so that's okay. All right. I was very pleased to get this ahead of time because it gave me a chance to go over, and it took me quite a long time to go over it because it's, as you can see, I was scribbling on it. You see, there's some things I don't like about it. You see, there's some suggestions. Surprise! 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 Look at all that. Look at all that.
How much version did you get?
Huh? I don't know where. See, I don't know what copy I have. I didn't like a lot of that. It isn't that I have a problem when things are put together. Which copy is this? This is my number 1 at the top
No,
of the page.
this is the one that, as far as I'm currently going through, I just.
It
had
looks
one
different.
Well, this one was where they had made changes from the original and they did a substitution. That's because it has 5 copies down there is part of the substitution, you know.
So this
One
is,
electronic, you know.
This probably is the
This is the
same
current
thing.
one that has, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
well, this is the one I got in the mail. The first thing I did when I got it
This is the intermediate stage,
was
so you
number
did-
every page, because if you want to refer back to something, it's really, I have this thing, I want the pages dated and I want them numbered. This is not Melissa, I'm not talking, you didn't do this. But I have this thing about when people do drafts of things that they don't date them, they don't say who did it, and they don't put a number on the page. Because if you want to go through it, you need to know what we're doing, so. Anyway, so I numbered them all. And, I mean, I don't know if it may not match what you have, but over and above whether or not this is something we should do, I mean, I'm not even talking about that at the moment. Over and above that, I get concerned when the thing is put together in such a way that you can't follow it because it's so inconsistent in the pattern used and the way it's done. And if I put myself in the position of somebody who's never seen any of this stuff before, have never worked with anything before, but I'm going to build a building, and I have to look at this and read this, and I should be able to read it and understand it and follow all the sections without a problem. And I think I have a problem doing that, and I'm familiar with some of the things. So this is all. I mean, I think I go around and around on this all the time. So does
You
Ed.
want to
with
start
me
at the
sometimes.
beginning and...
I guess so. It's the best thing we can do. And unless you have if you have questions, you want to go, if anybody has questions, I have some places where I have questions.
4104 procedure for approval on page 1.
Yeah, I have down there.
I thought we had gone into a mode of not putting the actual amount of application fees and things like that into an ordinance because of the difficulty of changing it if need be. Why do we say an ordinance, an application fee of $100? Why doesn't it just say an application fee established by council or whatever?
Well, a lot of it was, the discussion I was at was the chamber and others wanted to say, well, what is going to be the cost of this? And I think they just put 100 on because originally their intent was to look at it from the standpoint of, once we have it finally drafted and everything, it really should be tied to the review time that paid staff are going to do to really determine a fee. But the feeling expressed at the meeting I was at that resulted in this revision. They just threw $100 out to establish something.
Okay,
That
well,
was their logic.
I just think it's a bad precedent, and
Right.
I think we had lots of discussions on
Yeah,
the
before.
zoning ordinance about not putting concrete amounts into it.
Okay. All right, you on page 2 now?
Okay, on the fourth line, where it lists Shade Tree Commission, Disabilities Commission, et cetera. And I want to know who decides who the et ceteras are.
What number are you in?
It's
Oh,
right-
mine
right-
mine doesn't go on that page,
41.
mine's on another
Okay.
page, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, et cetera.
It seems like a kind of a vague, if this is supposed to be a checklist for developers and so forth and so on, and a procedure for the planning commission, I don't think that's good. I think we either say the appropriate commissions, or we don't name any of them, and don't name any of them, or we list all that
All
might
of
be
them.
appropriate, or, so that's one of my concerns.
Does your copies make it sound like you gave your $100 to the Athens Public Library? It really reads that way on mine.
Well, let's see. Yeah, along with the application fee of 100, well, they probably would be happy to have it. We could rent space for a copy at the,
Well, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
sort of things like that need to be.
Well, it says the recommendations have to be obtained by the appropriate commission,
well,
not from, it should be from, so.
yeah,
Yeah,
then let's
yeah.
leave off the et cetera business. And
wanna-
you can say commissions instead of just commission, and take out the IE business,
And don't name them all.
right?
Because at different times it might be different committees.
And then I want to know who's going to determine which are the appropriate ones. Will that be the service safety director?
That's the assumption.
Okay, then we'll just say as determined by. And maybe you could fix that business by saying, file one print copy at the Athens Public Library and 5 print copies and 1 electronic copy with the, if you move the public
But,
library
yeah,
up to the
front,
beginning.
yeah. Because I know people should know that, but
Well-
if you've never dealt with it before, you might dash down to the
Right.
public library. Okay. What else?
Okay, my next
Yeah.
My next question is section D on that page, within 15 business days. Of when?
That was my question too. After up above in C, it says within 15 business days from the date, the city officials have to give a report.
Uh-huh.
Now, are our 15 days, at 15 days after the city officials report, or 15 days after it's completed, or?
That's what I'd like to know, yes.
I have a question on both of those 15 days. What do those apply to?
Mayor, do you have a clue? I don't mean to add that to sound the way it's. You have a clue what the meaning was?
I'm not sure
Shall
what
I
the
hear?
meaning was, because one of my points at the last discussion of this was, if you take this in order, the Shade Tree Commission and the Disabilities Commission usually only meet monthly. If they didn't get to that, I mean, how could any of these timelines really kick
Well,
in?
it wouldn't be
And
stamped
when would-
complete.
It wouldn't be stamped complete by the service safety, unless those are done. But I would think that we would want to see the staff recommendations and the review by the department heads before we would consider it, or not on the same day
Yeah.
that it's due.
In that C there where people, it says the service safety director and any other city officials shall review the plans for compliance. Well, does that mean I mean, any other city official, fire chief, the,
Yeah,
but then you say, then it says department head someplace. Is that what you mean? Any other official or what do you, shall forward copies of the application to other city departments as deemed necessary. And then you come down to the next sentence and it says the service director and any other city official shall review. I mean,
What if you said the service safety director and department heads?
well, are there other city officials besides department heads who are going to review this? I know it sounds picky, but you're really throwing a lot of stuff in there.
well, it potentially could involve other than just the department heads. In fact, normally when we do the review now, we involve not only Nick Carr, but Nick Joseph and Scott Lambert, who
And,
are supervisors. They're not department heads.
Well, but how, couldn't it be changed to say, to include other, say, like other, well,
Officials as necessary, or other,
or other supervisors or heads or
Persons as
some
necessary.
persons as,
Other appropriate city officials?
yeah, other appropriate.
Well, I think that's why they put in the as deemed necessary, with the inference being that's being the service safety director. So,
Well, but then
Then they
that's
throw in this,
the other city officials down here at the bottom after that.
yeah, that comes after it. So once, if, that, the service
I know,
safety shall
that's
forward
worded.
copies of the application to whoever city officials deemed necessary, so you don't throw in another one, say any other, I don't know.
it's a little wordy.
It's a little confusing. All right. You're still up
What if
there.
you said they shall review the plans for compliance? That would be the service safety director and the city departments as deemed necessary. And that
That's
would-
right, so that's
Clear.
everybody, they shall review. You were on that thing about ballot language, weren't you?
Yes.
See, that's why she's good at that. They're slipping a little bit now since you
I
left.
noticed.
Not this, but ballot language.
Okay, and then, but we still haven't
Figured out the time.
figured out about the timeline. Now, everybody, I'm going to do a building, and I give all this stuff to Ray, and he passes it around to everybody that needs to review it, and all of the requirements are in, and he stamps it complete. And at that point, the 15 days for the planning commission comes into play, right? After
Well-
you've stamped it complete. This is complete after the
The
review.
reality of it is you'll never get to see and have that's not the first time the city department heads are gonna look at it. Because you can't get to a completed application without some degree of review by the water department, and the sewer department, and the fire, et cetera. I mean,
Well, I think
without
we want
input
that.
from them.
Yeah. But,
Because it just means it'll be changed, in all
But what I-
likelihood. I mean,
yeah,
part of it, having gone through this process a number of times, is usually the first plans the developer submits, there's a number of revisions to them that happen at the department head and level.
and like a pre-application process, basically, before they even start to fill out the application, so that they know what
But
they're
you-
required to do.
but you wouldn't be stamping it complete until all of that had been complied with, and you've gotten back the recommendations from the department heads and so on, right?
Right.
Well,
Okay, so
Usually.
then our 50, what do you mean usually?
Well, I mean, nothing is too, it can be a completed application if it has,
it has to have all of the appropriate plans on there, and then once it's, at that point, you determine that it has a complete set of plans as submitted. At that point, that doesn't necessarily mean that each one of those plans has been approved. There may be,
Well-
there may be some additional changes that need to be done.
Then it's not going to be a whole lot of use dropping it on our desk for action within 15 days if we don't have the recommendations from the fire department and whoever else.
Right.
Well, this says, what they're saying, they hear in 15 days they have to do a written report. I
Yeah.
mean, they can have their thing and have all their meetings, and they've agreed on this, but the 15 days does not apply to that. It applies to the fact that you have a written piece of paper.
Right.
So that's, I think that
Okay.
is a,
And then we have
I
to
don't know how you determine if they all get their pieces of paper in and what date that 15 days from when.
And if it happens to be over Christmas break or sometime, it's going to be hard to make the 15 days. I just am
Well,
saying I think that's a really tight timeline.
well,
I
I,
understand that, that somebody who's going to be doing a building wants to know as soon as possible, but
Well, what's difficult for me is because Ray has to stamp it as complete,
but it's not.
but since that paragraph follows after the appropriate recommendations from boards and commissions, I mean, does that really mean you have to have the recommendations before we even accept it for review by department heads? Or, let alone the planning commission? So it just doesn't
There's a problem.
follow a
with
logical
the-
sequence.
There is a problem with the sequence, is what we're trying to
Yeah.
say to them, okay?
and as a member of the planning commission, I don't want to see it until everything is finished. Not if
That's what I
have to
told him.
Decide in 2
Yeah.
weeks.
And this, so, how can we determine when our 15 days are up or something? And then after we do that, they have 10 days to, after the decision, we'll go ahead, I have
Yeah,
a.
well, that's, anyway, I don't
Yeah.
have any other problems on this page.
Well, I have a problem.
Where-
Okay. And, well, within 10 days after, we have to send them a copy and do that, that's okay.
That shouldn't be a problem.
That should, but F, I think it's F. Have we done this within 10 days after we send this person this thing and say, no, you can't do this? They can apply for a rehearing to us and an appeal. Do we ever really let them come back to us and do it?
Hasn't, well, they've come back with changes.
No, this is
But this
just. they-
is just to
they're-
reconsider the
Yeah,
decision. Uh-huh.
which seems like a waste of time to me. I mean, we haven't done that in the past where
And then if
somebody
they don't
doesn't
like
like
our
it.
decision, they go to court. But when do they ever get involved with counsel on this?
They don't.
I see.
That's, well,
This is all the ones right now that if you're zoned properly, because what it covers is new construction, all new construction outside, except for R1 and R2, I think. Except, if you read,
It's things that don't, that are not, or things that are across from an R1?
no,
Or
no,
within
it
a-
says no permit for the construction of a new, if you look in the restrictions, 4102A.
Yeah,
No permit for the construction of a new building shall be given except in conformity with the site plan approved in accordance with this chapter. Period. So that means every building that's new constructed is what, there it is. But when you get down to the exceptions, 1 and 2 family residential dwelling,
right.
accessory buildings are exempt.
well, there's,
PUDs are exempt.
PUDs are written exemptions.
Do those sections need to be combined somewhere or other? or,
Well,
um,
they're talking about, and they're saying no permit for the expansion, exterior alteration, or change of any, or change of use of any existing building shall be permitted except in conformity with the site plan approved in accordance with this chapter.
So if you change the
And,
front facing on a mall,
yep, but then you go down
down,
and say,
there's their
oh, okay,
exceptions down
the
here.
exceptions are gross floor space increase of less than 25%, but when you did do and say the exterior, exterior alteration, yeah, you put a new front like they have on Athens Plaza Mall, they'd have to go through site review process, yes.
Oh, I wish they would, because it's
but if
such
they're
an
not,
ugly color.
but if it doesn't involve a change in the floor space, or being in an R1, or adding parking spaces, they're not included. It really takes a mapping out of this to find
Determine-
out whether you're included or not.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that council has asked us to do, is using the GIS system, and I've talked to Ilgard about, because where are R1s with relationship, say, to the B zones? Well, the north, I guess it's, one side of Stimson Avenue would be subject to these regulations, the other side wouldn't. One side of Richland Avenue would be subject to the regulations, the other side wouldn't, in almost its entirety.
How about East State Street?
East State Street, as, well, once you get
You go up.
everything up to the bypass from town would be subject to it, because it's all R1. Now, there's a certain amount of area, because of the way Utah is zoned, I think Utah is all R1 for some reason, so you had, Applebee's would have to be, would have had to be, go through the process. Of course, it's a new construction anyway, so it doesn't matter. If you want to remodel or do it, it would be it. But then you have an R2 zone, and remember, we switched to Strathmore. The face used to be face on those two lots
Right,
on
yeah.
East State.
Yeah.
We switched them to face on Strathmore, and now there's two structures. That's zoned R2.
And then,
B3 starts right past Stockbrook for the front face, and then there's an R2
Two behind.
behind it. So
But not all the way
there's a
up.
little bit of an R1, I think, surrounding the Metropolitan Housing Authority. So
Yeah,
there are a few properties that, because I think the Hayes property at one time that the city purchased, about 80 acres or so, which is now, it's not been rezoned, it's still zoned in R1, so that would affect it. Let's see, the uptown area really doesn't get affected at all, because there's no R1s around it. But almost every one of your B1 zones has got R1s touching somewhere on it. So if you look at, well, the Dairy Queen would be surrounded, I think. The Hilltop, the top of the hill, plus, yep. You go down to the Mighty Mart, I think I'd have to look at that again. But anyway, when they're trying to figure out a program, a what-if statement, to try to do that, then can we modify it further? Because the chamber has asked if the building is, only in cases where the building, I think, is greater than 5,000 square feet. 10,000. I don't think we'll find too many of those right adjacent to the R1s. But it affects, but if you walk down through first the restrictions, then you have to take the restriction, then you have all these specific exemptions from site plan review, A through G, with D being probably one of the key ones, which has 3 sections, which really talks about expansion of if the square footage of the building, or the remodeling, I guess, and then the R1, and then the 5 parking spaces.
I've got one other question about that whole section E that we were just talking about. The last sentence says, such petition shall be presented to the court within 30 days after the mailing of the planning commission's decision to the applicant. I think it should say planning commission's decision on the applicant's appeal, because otherwise you're talking, going back to the first decision. After the mailing to the applicant, why don't we say,
Right.
of the planning commission's decision on the appeal.
On page 7 of mine anyway, G, it's almost exactly, the wording is almost exact, the last page in G, it's almost exactly the same as that F with wording that you just talked about, that we've been talking about there. I always have in that one, I always have a trouble with it when they talk about, I find this hard to follow, that within 10 days, any person or persons jointly or severally aggrieved by any decision of the planning commission. And then they go on to say, or any resident or any officer, department, or appointed body of the municipality may present to the Athens County Court of Common Pleas. They can,
But they have to ask for an
Well-
appeal, even if they're not the person who first made the,
yeah, but isn't that where they got into it over,
NCR.
yeah. Because of that, and then it was, and I thought they said that these people couldn't do it unless they were directly or jointly
Well, the court
agreed.
did.
The
I
court,
suppose the court could fill it out.
well, and this appears in things, and I've often wondered why it hasn't been looked at more carefully, because it causes confusion and a lot of problems that you didn't need to have if you worded it, if you checked it out right.
I think usually because the court, usually you have to use all your administrative appeals before they'll
Yeah.
consider it. But, yeah, we should
Well,
probably
I-
try to spell it out to the person.
I mean, it's confusing to a person who doesn't know anything about it. But both of those sections are almost exactly the same, and so any revisions to one about things of that nature, or about the mailing of the decision and that sort of thing, should be the same. The language should be the same in those two things.
4105, public notification. I've got a
What kind of a sign is that?
I've got a real problem about that. Not only do we not know, we were talking about trying to limit and reduce temporary signs.
Yeah,
we're
I know.
providing for requirement.
Yeah,
And we're providing the service safety director, out of his surplus manpower, send people out to post signs. And I think it's inflammatory. And we've always been able to do things like this with legal advertising, and why suddenly is a single site, does a single site have to have a sign while the rest of it can be done by legal advertising? And that doesn't make sense to me. And what I would like to request is that if we still belong to the municipal league, that we contact the municipal league and ask them if there's any municipality that does this for site reviews. And if so, could we see a copy of their ordinance? I don't know where the recommendation came from, but it's pie in the sky concept, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's the one I had that marked down there too, the sign. Why would you have it, what, the sign, why would we do this?
It doesn't say what size sign.
No.
Or how
We
long.
could have one of those big balloons, those animals, and, you know.
Ray gets to determine all that stuff. If you notice
Could
in
we
through
have,
here,
could we have a big balloon
he has
thing
to
up
make a lot
there?
of determinations.
Well, I thought maybe a couple of
You might not
searchlights.
like
at
this.
night.
You have to do this.
I don't have anything else on this page.
Oh, good. I got to this next page. We're kind of following the same page, but not quite. Mine isn't.
I assume
Where are you?
after,
You're at public, we're at public notification.
I'm at G, nuisances, in the next section.
which nuisances?
You really, well, yeah, nuisances.
We're referring to all of these titles that already exist. Why do they need to be even referenced here?
I think that the only reason for the reference was, it really was a kind of a recommendation from Steve, that if the person's that gets this and reads it and says, well, what is then the parking requirement? Well, it at least shows you exactly
Where to
where
look
that
for
parking,
it.
where to look in the code. And so, rather than having the person wander through the code or make repeated more phone calls to the city asking, where do I find this information out, you point them to it. And that was the only real reason for those specific recommendations. But I think they also should be aware of the stormwater runoff and soil erosion. It may not be applicable in all cases because something can be out of the floodplain or not on unstable soil.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem with referencing it, I guess. I'm just looking for ways that it could be simplified.
Yeah.
And the next one, 4108, this probably is a legal term, but the third line from the bottom of that section, the time limit shall be told until the
Yeah,
action of a court.
I have that.
That's-
I have that question.
Is
I
that-
asked that same question, and Debbie Phillips said it's a legal term, it's supposed to be in there.
Well,
Well, we could ask
I've
about
never
it.
seen it. I mean, I went and looked it up, but I have no legal dictionary at my house because I knew what they were talking about. I'm sure I know what they're talking about, but I'm not sure that,
Well,
I've never seen
yeah.
it before. Oh, and I had some other question here on that section. Wait till I look at this.
The
So
second
that if
line.
you aren't confused by the rest of it, at least you'll be confused by that word.
Yeah, well, I can't find it now. It seemed like that it should say not, and it seems, where's I can find that? When site plan, because the 2-year time limit shall be told until the action of a court determining the merits of the legal action to be confirmed, the final for appeal is it?
What it really means is shall be halted, doesn't it? The time,
Well, that's what I, you know,
shall be suspended, the time limit shall be suspended.
expanded
so-
until they don't do the count while it's
yeah.
during that period.
And the second line in that section, compliance with the plan and stated conditions of approval, should be a D on state.
Which,
in-
oh, here in the next thing.
That 4108, yeah.
I had that whole thing with the question. I didn't think it was clear. Oh, I know, this section. This is a section where they, on this 4109, they start at the top and they tell you all these things and you list them and then you go down here and they'll say, then they have them listed here and then they go down here with A, B, C, D and they list them again. They're listing the same things. See, all this stuff here is included in that. It's name of bound is A, map location is an A, name, see, they have the north arrow. They say it here, and then they write it
They put a
there.
checklist in.
Yeah. All that could just come out. Anyway, it's repetitious.
When you get to R in that section, where they're all by letter, I'd like to know how you're going to require a traffic impact study ahead of time, how you're going to predict that something will generate more than 100 new vehicular directional trips without a traffic study, and if you're going to do a traffic study, who pays for it, and when are you going to do it, and for how long? Because a traffic study for July and August is not going to be the same thing around here as it is in September and October. And first of all, I don't know how you're going to predict whether it's going to need a traffic study.
I asked that question, and Councilmember Phillips said there is in, I think it was the Civil Engineering Handbook, she gave me a reference and I haven't looked it up yet, that different types of business based upon square footage and such somebody's made an estimate of how many trips per day that'll generate.
I think it
Unless
might
there's
be-
something to go back to and look like that, there really is no way of telling.
Might be really different for an auto parts store in Columbus and an auto parts store
I brought
here.
up that question. It's supposedly based on population.
Is it?
So like you'd be comparing a 20,000 city.
But it's,
Not as just the stores being,
yeah, well, seems to me it
There's
ought,
a huge difference between Athens and Athens.
right, yeah, well, it seems to me it ought to be based not just on the 20,000, but on the catchment area that people are coming from, because a 20,000 city outside Columbus is not going to draw people from nearly as far as a 20,000 city in Athens County. Anyway, I think this is an impossible one to comply with.
So you want to see it
Traffic
revised.
study?
I agree that you need to look at what the traffic's gonna be like, but I don't think there's any concrete measure like this that you can write into law that's gonna give you what you want. I think that probably is where my indignation ran out.
Did you read further?
Yes, I read further. I got less critical as I went on.
You're tired? You're tired there? Anybody else over here has? Well, Harry didn't get
I didn't
his,
get
so
it,
he
no.
didn't get it, so he didn't have a chance to go through it.
Oh, there's one more.
Okay, see him, because I had to see a few.
There's one more in section E in the last section, the last, whatever it is.
Changes to site
Capital
plans.
letter E, a major change shall be construed. And all proposed changes shall be acted upon in the same manners as a new site plan, and I just would say in the same manner. Just because.
Same manner.
Manner, yeah. You don't
By
want more than one
method.
manner.
Wait, but they mean major changes, because there's another, see, it says, all proposed changes shall be acted upon in the same manner as a new site plan. But you talk about minor changes first, and then you're talking about major, but there you say
Okay.
all changes. Do you mean all changes or just major? I think they mean major changes. And I think that should be in there, because somebody can pick up on that.
Right.
A picky person
Okay,
can
let's
pick up.
put major between proposed and changes.
Yeah. Mhm. A picky person.
Well, I just think you don't have to be picky, you just have to be trying to comply with the law, and it gets really,
I have a question back a little bit. Could we go back a little bit? On what I call page 6, but it's 4110, B6.
what would it be, 6?
It's
right,
reduction
yeah,
in
yeah,
size of signs.
Yeah.
That's a minor, how'd the sign get in there?
Well, sign, you're supposed, the application says what you'll do for a sign on the property, doesn't it?
I don't know, does
So
it?
then if you change the
Change,
size.
okay, it just says signage with sign, something, oh, it says, all
I
right.
think there's-
So if you're gonna change your sign, but is it
It's
the
the
size
proposed-
or
it's
the sign? Because there are two different things. There's the size of a sign and like it could have flashing lights and rolling stuff that sort of thing. So, I mean, do you really, is it only the reduction in the size of the sign that's a change, or is it
That's what it
the
says.
flashing sign, or in the signs that we haven't done anything about, but, well, I mean, it's just, it
That's the
doesn't,
only
yeah.
thing it says, is reduction in
Yeah.
the size, so.
Well, I just wonder if it's all aspects, so. I don't mean if you had yellow, you're gonna have red, but certainly in a sense we're worrying about, we wanna go through the sign ordinance, and the bank down here that wants to be able to flash their little pictures all the time. Now, maybe this place wants to flash their little pictures all the time, or they don't wanna flash their little pictures all the time, so.
If they want to, they have to say so in the application.
But if afterwards they decide to change their minds, see?
But that's not a change in the size.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it should be in here.
It says
That's
reduction in the size of signs.
I want any change in operation, flashing, all right. And through here, and as I think I mentioned it in 4109, where they list all these things and then they do ABC and say the same things over again. In some places, they should divide them up and they don't, because you read through and it's all kinds of different things you're supposed to do instead of saying A, B, C or something like that. And one of them is, they lump it together, 4110B, they lump all this stuff together, adjustments to size and location of structures, off-street loading, they just do that all in one thing, and then down here, and then they say in other things, and do 1, 2, 3, when actually they're listing a bunch of things in there that some of them are related to each other, but some are not. I mean, you have size and location of structures, that's something, off-street loading areas is another thing, pools, decks, and that. So I would suggest that if you're going to list under and other improvements, and I think that should be explained as under that as A, B, C, D or something, that all of those things should be listed, just so you can look at it and know, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about this lump. I don't like lumps. Does she understand? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
B,
They do that every so often. You either lump everything together or you do it in an outline form, the way they follow,
If you
but
move
it
it,
moves
it
from one
has
to
be
another
closer
when you
to
go
one
through
property.
this.
Yeah.
It was.
And I keep looking at these things from the aspect of a person who really doesn't work with us all the time, and they sincerely want to do what they're supposed to do, but they pick up this piece of paper and they can't follow it because it's not written in a way to make it clear.
Well, I think a simplified checklist could be made.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
them.
it's just,
But, and whether that checklist doesn't really need to be part of the ordinance,
no.
but part of the procedure
The
for enforcing
procedure.
it. And I think, well, we weren't going to talk about our reaction to the idea of the site plan review.
I don't know, you can. That thing, 41.09F is another one where they lump everything in one lump instead of dividing it up so it's a little easier to follow. Other places are in that whole thing, but that's another thing that I think is. But I don't, that's the other question. Does anyone have wish to express an opinion on that?
Well, it's got another, I mean, they talk about it, 4110, change of site location B. Specifically talking about 4, I guess. It should be no more intense than any of the following, and they say adjustments to the size and location of structures is one of them.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, say, or other improvements that do not, and then it says move or relocate a principal structure such that the placement of structure will be closer to any one property line than existed before such location. Well, if you move it, it's gotta be closer to another property line. I mean,
Someplace.
can't move
You
anything
raise
without
it
it being
up.
closer to somewhere.
You can make it taller or shorter.
You could raise it up and lower it,
But that,
stand it on end.
What?
Yeah, well,
I believe they're gonna, are they not gonna, they're gonna vote on the third reading in September, right?
They haven't had second reading yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
Do they have second? Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
I have to ask one quick question.
yeah.
There's a rather extensive list of what is required for new construction, such as name of developer, name of the resident. There's no such list for alterations of existing structure.
Right.
So,
Well,
what's asked for?
I don't know.
Which section
Where
are you
pa-
referring
what-
to, Ed?
I may have,
Well,
yeah, it's,
the section which deals with new construction has a list of, and this is for.
That's 4109.
4109.
Supposed to have the name
Yeah.
of the project, the name of the
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. There's no corresponding list of what is required for a
changes,
change in
changes.
structure.
That's
It
true.
just says you have to meet the minimum requirements of these particular things, but you don't know what you're supposed to submit. If I were changing the existing structure, I wouldn't have a clue as to what, you want my name, what my address, what the place is, anything else.
But I can waive it.
Waive everything.
Well, but they're talking about changes to a site plan that you've already submitted,
No,
I
not
aren't they?
4109.
Not in 4109?
That's a-
That's just a new section. Oh, 7?
What you're supposed to do,
Right.
presumably with existing structures.
Oh, okay, all right, I was on
But
the
it
wrong
doesn't
page.
say what you're supposed to include in the
If it's,
site
if,
plan.
if it's, okay, yeah, okay.
That's missing.
Well,
well,
that,
now there is 4108 site plan content. And maybe it needs to be, this,
Actually, 4108 does not plan content.
it talks about bonds
Right,
and stuff,
yeah.
but it, from the page before is what it says, and then, I wonder if they left out something there which talks about, that was left
well, that
out.
was standards
I
for
don't think there's
review.
something missing there.
It looks like there's a section missing, and then this is kind of a standard thing on performance bonds and all that sort of thing.
Well, standards for review, is that, well, 4109 says documents required for a site plan review, but it says for new construction.
Yeah, this
And-
is just the,
And maybe we need to say site plan content, and maybe we want that
well, see here, do you have this?
for all of for new and old.
Do you have that on the bottom of your
No, I
page?
have it up here.
Okay, see, well, that,
Yeah.
when we go,
That's
and,
bonds, but.
yeah, but it doesn't say anything about contents.
No, but then
Debbie, there's
the next
something.
one.
If we have a, he's saying, is there a section missing in there?
Well, usually, like when we write them, or codes, like you say Title 41, then you do an index.
Yeah,
They don't have an index.
yeah, I know, they're an index.
Because it's not in any order. How can you put an index to something that's not in order?
Well, the index is just 41.
Right.
1, 2,
Well,
3,
he
4.
thinks that there should be a different order for each of these things. Is that what you're saying, Wayne?
No, it should all be, it should be something that's simple and logical. You know,
Yeah.
then you can put an index to it and follow it through. So,
Well, and I haven't even thought through in my own mind what I think of this, the need.
Debbie, and this is all she has right now.
Yeah,
And no one has raised that question before about that missing section.
yeah, it's either a section missing or they named that section wrong.
Yeah, well, it
My
seems to
guess
me.
is there's something, because
Yeah.
there's nothing that
says
says
what
what the site plan
should-
for existing structure is supposed to contain.
Well, maybe it just should be the same thing.
Yeah, but they
If you've got
should,
an existing structure, you've already got blueprints and,
You wouldn't need all of that for an existing structure.
Well, if you're doing an expansion, you would. And if you're just doing, renovating 25% of the square footage or more than that, then your site plan doesn't change. It's just the interior that changes. Same thing when you do the exterior alteration, usually your site plan doesn't change. Because if you're not adding square footage to the building, it's just an exterior alteration. And they've never defined exterior alteration in this, so I don't know what it is.
well, if, seems to me one thing that could be done is to do attach to this, or have a section with the checklist and have a checklist for existing structures and remodeling existing structures and a checklist for new structures. And they can be pretty much the same until you get to the things that would be brand new if you were putting a building on a site that had one. And that's probably how it ought to be put in there, and it's probably, should be an amplification of that 4109, and then they ought to retitle 4109.
Debbie says that they've taken this from all the suggested statutes from the comprehensive plan.
That explains a
And
lot.
maybe when they
That
copied it, they just left out a little
explains.
section.
Oh, possibly not. Thank you.
Yeah,
Not this Debbie, Debbie Phillips.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know, yeah.
It's the comprehensive plan part that makes it understandable, not the Debbie part.
The Debbie part doesn't have anything to do with it.
The
Either
other-
Debbie part.
The other thing I wanted to say is that this is going to increase the number of decisions that have to come to the planning commission considerably. And for instance, there were 8 of them in 2007. And over the last couple of years, you've got another 6, 7, 8, 9. And
You're
if
just
you...
doing the new constructions?
Hmm?
You're just doing the new construction?
I'm just doing the things that are site plan things
Site
that have
plan.
that have not had to come to the planning commission.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is, if you look at that, if you've got, say, the potential of, say, a dozen new projects coming to us, you're going to have the potential of maybe 6 of those not liking our decisions and coming back again. So that's the potential of 18 more cases coming to us. Plus coming on a 15-day timeline. It's going to be kind of hard to work that into a planning commission schedule, it seems to me. If you've got any planned unit developments that are coming back in for 1 and 2, for preliminary approval,
Subdivision.
final approval, subdivisions. And it's gonna take more than paying parking to get people to serve on the planning commission. That's- However, that's just an aside.
Well, as in here, when you go through here also, it seems like the service safety directors has a few things added on in here, or is it? Is it just because the name shows up more, or is it adding to it?
It does, I mean, in terms of what's going to be covered by the existing titles in the code. The thing that's going to happen here is that between now and the first week of October, Steve and I will have to write an administrative procedure that will tie 41 into 21, 25, 23, 27, so that not only will people who come to us be able to figure out what they're supposed to do, we will then have a standard so that we can give it to the rest of the staff and say, this is the manner in which we're going to apply and execute. And we have to be ready to do that by the first week of October, because this will pass council the first week of September.
Well, I guess there's one more thing about this that bothers me, and that is, it seems to me, it's shifting administrative functions, things that have been administrative functions in the past, to the planning commission, which is not an elected body and not really charged with administering the city. So in theory, I don't think it's a wise move.
As if I understand correctly, this was not submitted to us for review for today. We just received it, and so we're discussing it because of interest with planning commission members and citizens. Did you say it's the second reading's already been done?
Yes,
May?
ma'am.
Well, I'm concerned about having readings and getting it close to being adopted when it really isn't in very good shape. I think there are a lot of problems with it, but I don't know. I have no authority to do anything about that. I don't believe it.
Well, I've taken notes. And
You've
I
taken-
promised
you've
Councilmember
tried-
Phillips
tried.
that I would meet with
Tell
her.
him.
And we will make it work.
Well, and on the other hand, and I was starting to say before, I really haven't made up my mind whether I think, in theory, this is a good idea. That I haven't thought it through far enough or looked at it enough to say, yes, we should do this. And on one hand, I think so, because you all know that I don't like some of the things that have gone in, the development that we have and the stores and things. I don't like them. I think they got in and things get in, and there's some things on the books now that people are saying it's just one building, or, you know, we're going to do this. And so I feel that some things should be done about that, but I'm not sure this is this is a thing, but I haven't really thought it through, so I
Well, I
have.
think there's one other concern that I have about it, and that is that it's an erosion of private property rights. And if you have a lot and you're already bounded by zoning restrictions, and you're already bounded by the traffic constraints that we have and so on, this is another layer that you have to go through, potentially twice to the planning commission and once to the court if you don't like the answers. And I think it takes more than just saying this is not to discourage business in the preamble than to make that true.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything? We don't have any, I mean, this is not a thing for action, so. Okay. You're allowed to speak. We have here, opportunity for citizens to speak about items not covered on the agenda. This was not covered on the, so you can go over there and talk. Never let it be said that I didn't let you talk.
Larry Payne with the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. We have some concerns about the potential long process involved, similar to what Peg was talking about, is that at the last council meeting, the first council meeting this came up, Mike Knoll, I think, gave a good example. Considering if people do want certain types of development, that in the real world of business, there are some fast timelines, and we're not saying make hasty decisions, but there needs to be a conceptual process involved somewhere that a developer can come before the planning commission and say, we have this idea. If we meet all the rules on the site plan review, will our project be approved? Right now, if you have to go through all these steps, there's no guarantee that it would be approved, on some exceptions here. And I think the example at the county engineer's office was a perfect one there, where he gave the idea that when you tore down an old building that was really kind of an eyesore, and then right or wrong, depending, I know Ms. Joanne doesn't agree with this, the project does look better now, but CVS Pharmacy, for instance, had to make a decision within 30 days. Were they going to stay at the Athens Center or move into this? So Mike was able to go through administratively, again, like you were talking about, find and got a determination, yes, the project could proceed. If he had to wait 5 or 6 months, it never would have happened. So that's an issue. But one of the other big concerns we have is the impact on small businesses. Now, we had meetings, and it was discussed of 20,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot, there's 0 exemptions. We would strongly urge the Planning Commission to suggest a 10,000 square foot exemption for new construction, because whether it's intended or not, this process now would favor out-of-town developers with large finances. A small local developer would have a hard time going through this process, let alone understand it, like you said. That it would be very difficult for a small business to go through this process as proposed. So, thank you.
Give me something that's 10,000 square feet. Give me an example. What would be something?
Well, most of your restaurants like Applebee's, Damon's are 5,000 to 6,000, 7,000 square feet.
That's my next thing to get in there.
So most of your projects would be under 10,000. Like a Max Thrifty store, for instance. That would be very difficult for a local person to build now, under this proposal. Now those, when you get to a retail store, you're looking at maybe 2,000 to 4,000 square feet. But anything under 10, I think would probably, Steve, like we talked about this, wouldn't that be like 80 to 90% of local projects in the last 10 years when we went through the list are under 10,000 square feet?
The expansion on programs will take it to about 60,000. Anything like Walmart, Staples, Food Shopping Center, Lowe's, obviously those are lower than 10,000. Most projects are 10 or less.
So all the
Single standing buildings.
Yeah. So the larger ones would be going through the process, but smaller ones that we just would urge. We've urged council, and I'm not so sure that that's was agreed upon with their suggestion, is that we need to think about small local businesses, not stifle that development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, see, I would think that if you were going to have a piece of property like the engineers, I don't like that idea of putting all those pieces of things on that one piece of property. And like CVS should have just stayed where it was, because it was easier for me to get in and out, and that's where I get my prescriptions filled, so. But, I thank you for your input. He was a citizen who spoke. Is there any other citizen who wishes to speak?
Red shirt citizen.
Okay, announcements or other business. Our next meeting is whenever it's
August 3rd.
August 3rd. Okay, so but that's not the public hearing. Okay, do we have any other business? Steve, you always have other business. She has
I'm
other
not going
business.
to be here on the 16th.
She won't be here on the 16th. You don't have anything to pass out to us? You always keep us on our toes and informed, but that's all right. Minutes of the last meeting.
You want yours back?
No, I've got this one all marked up.
Who was here?
I wasn't. You and Harry were.
You're right.
Yeah.
We were the only ones here?
I haven't had a chance to.
Ray, you were here.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you and Harry have to do this
I
because,
move to approve the minutes.
Harry, you have to,
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. All right, now, I shall entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Peg moved, and it is, what time? 3:49, that's over there, looking at that one over there. The light shines on that one, I can't see the,
It's not right anyway.
well, he said I had to go by that one over there. When I argued about how do I know, that's right.
Or in the
Okay, those are yours.